Welcome to the Seraphine podcast. I'm Seraphine Arocha, and we are bringing a segment into the show. It's called Checking In with a Doctor. If you watched my first episode, it was with Dr. Auburn Ellis, and she is my doctor. And just like any kind of check-in with a doctor for your health, physical, I believe also in mental health, since I have two psychologists and a psychiatrist. And I also have an illness in me, and it's called systemic racism. And I'm trying to gain some health in my mind and my body. So I'm going to Dr. Auburn, who teaches, is an educator online to dismantle systemic racism. And she's back, and she'll be with me every month to help us as viewers start to understand how to continue this journey and how it wasn't just a 1 week, 2 week shame spiral that we all went into, and that it's so much more than that. Welcome back.
Thank you. I love being here.
Thanks
for having me.
Oh, and I'm so glad that I'm not overwhelmed and nervous, and there was so many things going on, and now I feel like I can breathe.
For sure.
And thank you for holding that space for me, because I'm learning more and more now how holding space and listening is the very first step in dismantling racism.
I agree. Very much so. And a lot of people don't like to listen. And that's where we find ourselves in these situations. And so when you were kind of talking in the intro about how we're going to check in every month, I just started to get really excited because during my training, I did one with another organization with Auburn Ellis, Friends of Auburn Ellis, Kansas City Friends of Auburn Ellis last week. And we were talking about like a 90-day plan, you know, and looking at how to extend this so that it just doesn't become some fly-by-night, some event that happened and everyone is fired up and then the fire dies down. So continuing the dialogue is so pivotal to helping us just evolve as people.
I've been so, I don't know, what's the word? You know what it is? It's like tasting something that you've denied yourself for so long, and realizing, why was I afraid of trying papaya? Sure. It has all these weird, strange little black seeds in it. And I remember thinking it looked like bugs in it. And papaya is so juicy and so amazing.
And passionate.
It is, right? And I started to just, as I was, cleaning my house or I had free time going on a walk, I just started to look up keywords and phrases and saw some books that came up, books on tape, or not tape. Books. I'm like, my age, right? And then podcasts, and just starting to listen and learn. And today, before you came over, I was listening to Layla Saad's Good Ancestor podcast, and she was making reference to Harriet Tubman, and her guest was talking about how she loved Harriet Tubman as a little girl, and she was from New York, and she found out she was from Auburn, New York. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to share this fact because maybe Auburn's name is from there, like inspired by it. Because again, lineage and name, I'm learning more and more with each of my friends is not every person, every culture, but specifically Black culture, that sense of knowing your ancestors, where your name is derived from,
sure.
To where when people ask questions like, let me guess what you are. A lot of people will ask me that. And
which is a microaggression. Let me throw out a vocabulary word there, right?
Yeah. I didn't, and a lot of people have done that to me. And I never thought of it because my lineage is so like proud, and like they have all these like books and books and books of here is your great great grandfather.
Sure.
So I didn't realize what it would feel like if someone was trying to guess, like it's a game of who you are, and how much it would actually really sting.
Sure.
To be like, I don't know who I am.
I think that's important because that's part of the reason that I tell people to call me doctor, you know, instead, my last name is Ellis, but Dr. Auburn, just to make it more casual. When we think about our ancestors who were brought here as enslaved peoples, their names were taken from them, and there were so many things taken from them, but one of them was strictly the name, because you wanted to strip them of any memory that they had of their lineage and of who they were. And that was part of like the dehumanizing process. And so when people ask me, I don't really know. Like, I know who my grandmother is, great grandmother, maybe, right? And then after that, is it lost? It's lost in paperwork. It's kind of lost in translation. And so when we were given freedom, quote unquote, a lot of people took the names of the slave masters, and that's where our names were derived from. And so part of the thing with me is reclaiming like the doctor and forcing people to use that and reclaiming my name, and just as a person, as a human, as an elevated human, and separating yourself from, you know, that harsh history of the removal.
That is, that actually really sits sickening to me, that the names that are the last name that you are called by is from an abuser.
Right.
That's heavy. Woo, I didn't want to cry again, but
yeah.
Wow.
And I'm going to drop a book, The Willie Lynch Project, The Making of a Slave. It's literally maybe like a 30-page book, but it goes through the process of, you know, the dehumanization process. Take your name, take your memory, take your children, separate you from your family, and just ways to bring you to submission.
I've been revisiting a book that was way over my head in high school, Huxley's Brave New World. And just recently, the streaming service Peacock decided to make a show about, based off of loosely the book. And in it, they basically put a streaming, kind of like with a little thread that goes into the brain, that is a direct kind of cue to the people who are overseeing this group of people to control emotions. And there's pills. So there were, in the beginning, it was written in the 1950s, and the pills are obviously kind of a nod to when you think of antidepressants and you think of things that, you know, alter your moods, right? Sure. But then I was watching it on a whole nother level, because they refer to alphas, betas, gammas, and epsilons. And it's this level hierarchy of people. And the alphas are portrayed as males. Sure. The betas are women who are highly sexualized. The gammas are kind of like the people who are, you know, your cleaning people that are like really sweet and just, oh, whatever you want, Mr. or Mrs. And then the epsilons are like the garbage men. And in the book, there's an uprising, because there is the outskirts of this brave new world that is set, I believe, in London. The TV show has it in London, and I have to really go back and read it from the beginning to the end. And anyway, there is a whole group of people who live freely, and they are called savages. And they go to the savage lands, these people from the brave new world, and they go like a theme park to watch the savages perform the marriage ceremony.
Field trip.
Totally. Like Disneyland for culture.
Sure.
And anyway, they take a savage with them back to their brave new world. and basically there is an uprising because he introduces new ideas. So I looked at this book and I remember it again. I've like all these heavy books you read when you're younger. And going back,
so many indicators in there. Do you hear like the hierarchies and just the levels and savages?
Totally. I mean, and just like, and again, alpha, beta, like alpha male, you know, and then so many beautiful ways to help people really understand what's going on in our world. But then when I read it in school, we were talking about pedagogy and we're talking about education and we're talking about when you apply race theory into teachings, it's so important, I'm realizing now, of how to discern and kind of break down for younger people these heavy stories. How do you feel going into this next school year with material like this and us being separated? Being in boxes, literally with a computer screen, are you afraid that we're going to start to be missing the translation of these heavy texts? Or, I mean,
I think there's more room for growth because the internet, if you're careful about, you know, considering your sources, you can really find a lot of information. And kids are going to have to use different platforms. So like distance learning is not a new thing, you know, online learning is specifically, but distance learning started in like the 1920s and they were mailing things back and forth from the schools to individuals so that they can like finish papers and finish their coursework. So people have been studying it and been successful in distance learning for a while. I think that that social interaction can happen in a controlled way, right? Because we're dealing with our pandemic. But I think there's so much new opportunity. And just depending on, you know, who the educator is, you can have endless possibilities.
Have you come across what I call the emotional boundary wall, like in a Zoom meeting? Like I feel so strange. You see these boxes of all these people, right?
Like Brady Bunch.
Yeah, and you can either mute yourself or you can even take your picture off.
Sure.
And you're speaking and you're trying to connect your material to where it resonates. What advice do you have to educators moving forward on this platform, because this is what you're doing right now, is you're doing this on a day-to-day basis.
So we start off connecting in Zoom for the first few minutes so that I can kind of go through salient points, vocabulary, things that you should be cognizant of as we move forward. And then we go into another virtual platform called openlearningvillage.net. And that allows many different forms of communication. So there's a chat portion where we break out in groups. There is a blog portion where people are able to go and record their thoughts. We have discussion boards. And initially when you come in, there's a quiz. And so we're checking our understanding of the things that we've already talked about before. And a lot of people have described it as feeling like they're going back to school, right? Because we're talking about anti-racism work, and it's different than proclaiming I am not a racist. That's a lot of people's taglines at this point. And I think anti-racism work is defined by seeing that the balance is so off that your actions have to promote anti-racism in order to become better, right? So if we think about a scale and we think about like 400 years of oppression and how it's tipped the scale, you can't just say, oh, well, I didn't have slaves, or, you know, that sort of thing. That's not my fault. That's only going to kind of bring it up a little bit. So to become equal, you have to have some sort of action, like what we're doing right now, and help people. So I think going back to the original question, Zoom doesn't allow for the full capability of connectivity. And this is why we are heading into our platform to kind of help as people.
What do you think? So now that what are we in time-wise? So it's been how long since our first podcast?
A couple of months, maybe?
Yeah, about 2.
Yeah.
I think, Aaron.
little
Aaron,
less.
do you remember? Yeah, about 2.
Not a lot has changed.
No, and it's so I don't know what the word is. So I have a constant reminder every day, because for the protests, Johnny and I made those T-shirts with George Floyd's face on it, and we bought a considerable amount of T-shirts because we had this big feeling of like wanting to understand people's stories. We wanted to be a part of a protest and feel unified, and we wanted to give, and we wanted to by giving something, we could ask a question and receive in terms of education, because we felt going in there and being like, so tell me, like, why are you here? But we made like so many, and they're in boxes at my front door, and every day I walk in and out of my house, and it's a reminder of this feeling of, what am I doing today? How am I going to be an advocate for Black voices? And then there's also a real sense of, to be perfectly honest, there are days where with COVID and just exhaustion and just being like, oh God, today, like, not showing up, like just
emotionally draining.
Yeah. So I guess to the listeners who might have felt something and were posting, you know, and now they're kind of getting
complacent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are things that you feel like are good check-ins with the soul, or reigniters of like the flame?
Sure. I think that a lot of the participants in my workshop have been talking about that and dialoguing with themselves and others about how they can move forward. I've got one more session happening first Sunday in September. Tickets are available on Eventbrite, but we've been looking at ways to find new things in your feed, right? So follow new people, people of color, BIPOC voices, organizations that are doing the work, and help change your everyday mindset. So like, what are the things that you check in with every day? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you know, those are very influential. So just add a few new follows. That will help you stay in tune with the movement. I think that protests aren't really happening in Kansas City, but they are in other places all around the United States, and the fire is still burning. As far as education is concerned, you know, jump into a workshop. There's a lot happening, not necessarily just mine, just around and actually the planet. And I would say tune into other forms of news, like NPR, you know, had some discussions about people of color on the other side of the world having the same struggle with police brutality. So I think not always looking at it from a United States guise, but looking at the struggles of the world, and that can really open our eyes to just change and how big it needs to be, you know, to make an impact.
I've found I have a love of documentaries, and I have a love of learning, and I also just am in love with this concept of now education in my 40s. So for instance, I'm wearing a Basquiat t-shirt, and I watched the movie first in the 90s that it came out.
Sure.
And I've always been kind of in love with the 60s and 70s and just really romanticized that period. And I had to remind myself over the last few years, and especially over the last few months, of who this artist is, what his message is. And one of the sayings or his graffiti, he says most kings have their heads cut off, and the crown, this crown that I'm so attracted to. Like I have a crown on the side. My husband and I have matching king and queen tattoos. We're so in love.
His hair is like a crown too.
Oh, and he totally.
Like how it's framed
He's
with your
just,
shirt right now. Yeah.
But revisiting his story and my heart just opening up as an older woman and really understanding versus like, you know, watching a movie. And I think I love art and I love film. And
so here's another challenge I'll issue for you. Because
Okay, cool.
part of the things we should be doing is also issuing the challenges.
Yes.
Can you name another Black artist?
Oh my
Like
goodness.
from this era? Like
From this
80s,
era? No.
90s?
I can't right off the top of my head.
So let's do some research.
next week?
We'll find.
I will. Because that's what excites me is all right, asking myself questions to go. And it's an exciting, I hate to say rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But then
it's a great rabbit hole.
You're pausing. And the other thing is understanding within your own community what some of the pain in your own community. I was talking to you about the Nation of Islam and going down this little, I love reading about cults. So usually it's like Scientology or it's, you know, people say Mormons, etc. Well, there was a spin-off of the Nation of Islam, which was out there. And I didn't even realize that within our community, there was a very dangerous person with Black youth. And I learned something about it. I would have never, ever clicked on it before. And I asked myself, well, why?
Yeah.
You're into cults. Like, why wouldn't you want to know about what could be something that was a cult that isn't associated with white people, right? Yeah. So it's so interesting how, again, challenging.
Issue the challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any others? Because I wanna begin to, like I said, it's about educating and coming forward and being like, all right, like and the other thing is not coming up like, look at me, I'm a good student. Because that's the other part that's really hard is because it's so exciting to learn and you want to share it. But then also realizing how much knowledge is out there and how
the more you know you don't know,
right?
And it gets so scary.
Oh God, it does. So talk to me a little bit more about what we can do.
Sure. So the 3 things that I say at the end of every training, if you forget everything else that I said today, you remember that there's a difference between anti-racism and not being a racist, right? So let's just cancel out that statement. Cancel culture, we're canceling. Yeah. I'm not a racist. The second one is issue the challenges, which we just played out an example of. And the last one is honor the conversations. So there will be times when it's difficult to have these conversations with the people in your immediate life, right? You and I are having it, but can you have the same conversation with your mother or your father or your aunt or your cousin, or, you know, the uncle that is in 3 towns over where the buses don't run, right? Yeah. And it becomes difficult. And we seek out resources that can help us have those dialogues, because they're difficult conversations. So that would be my top 3 things.
Well, I am going to take those top 3 and we are going to post that underneath this podcast.
Yes.
So when this podcast airs, I always get a little frustrated because I'd like it to air right at the time. So I will post for you that September. What are the dates again?
Oh, the first Sunday in September is September 6th, I believe. 6, 7, 8. Yes.
All right.
From 1 to 4 p.m. It's a 3-hour anti-racism crash course, and it is listed on Eventbrite.
And then can people going forward contact you personally to...
Yeah. So I have been scheduling a lot of meetings with different organizations in Kansas City and the larger United States. If you are interested in bringing in a training for an organization, an institution, corporate, nonprofit, or just maybe a group of friends, right? That's a fun party.
It is actually. It is.
Grab some wine, we can wine and dialogue. You can find me on Instagram, Dr._Auburn, on Facebook, Auburn Aesthetic, and then Studio 5400 is my company, but also website. You could do auburnaesthetic.com.
All right. Well, thank you for the check-in, Doctor.
Yes.
And I look forward to next month and talking to you about another artist besides Mr.
And we need to just do like an art talk, right?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of art buffs out here.
Oh,
and so we can just
completely. And after we get off the mic, I'd like you to just give me a few because I'm an art buff. So I'm like, oh, all right. I love it. Thank you so much, as always. And by the way, thank you for the words at my event. I did a podcast launch this last weekend, and I asked Auburn to come up and help me introduce our podcast commercial. And your words will forever be a gift to me. And as always, your friendship is solid. You have helped me stay grounded in a time to where I wanted to retreat so many times, like a North Star kind of pulling me to the true north.
Yeah.
So
that's another Harriet Tubman reference.
It is.
Follow the North Star. We're coming full circle.
Oh my gosh,
here.
that's so good to know.
Yeah.
I use it all the time. Mm-hmm. I really do. Auburn, New York, and North Star. Harriet, you're a badass. All right. Well, with that, that is another episode of the Seraphiend podcast. And this segment is checking in with the doctor, as in Dr. Auburn Ellis.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.